you would go with that.
Well, probably, sorry, just getting back to what Michael mentioned about, working with the riders as far as a plea bargain goes for, what they would accept as a non-start rule and all that sort of stuff.
No, okay, now I understand.
Yeah.
I think that, at the risk again of another headline tomorrow saying that I'm completely against the anti-doping agencies, one of the problems that I have that I think is making it harder for the athletes to completely, I shouldn't say completely trust the agencies, but to feel like they're being reasonable and doing their best to not to avoid convicting an innocent athlete is the wording in the anti-doping code that calls itself strict liability, meaning that you could take it to any extreme you want, because the wording is that no matter how something gets into a urine sample, the athlete is expected to explain how that got there and is responsible for it. Of course, there must be some limit to that for a reasonable interpretation, right? I mean, if a person in the lab decides to insert some sort of banned substance into the urine, by the way that's written, an athlete is responsible for that, and that can't possibly be right. And by the same token, there isn't very much leeway for any sort of reduced sanctions for lesser offenses. Everything is considered a doping offense if a panel decides that an athlete used a banned substance or attempted to use a banned substance or attempted to buy a banned substance. It's pretty broad. And any time a system is made to be that black and white, when I think everybody can agree that life generally is not that black and white. There are always other circumstances that can make things more convoluted than that. In order to get a group of athletes together that are going to have a say, that are going to be willing to listen to what the anti-doping agencies have to say, they're also going to have to be given a reason to believe that their opinion is going to make the rules a little more flexible, or they're at least going to be listened to. And I don't know that they have that. Right now, I don't know that they have that trust. The reason it doesn't appear that way, and the reason it doesn't appear like a lot of the other cyclists don't see it the same way I do, is because, and this again is not directed at anybody here in particular, or anybody in the anti-doping agencies in particular, but whenever things like Mr. Moeller pointed out earlier happen with Pat McQuaid and things of that nature, where people are singled out and there's prejudice against particular athletes, it almost makes of no value a discussion with the athletes, between the athletes and the agencies policing athletes, because there just isn't any trust there. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is everybody's wrong on some level. The athletes are wrong for behaving a certain way, but they also don't trust that those who are policing the rules are necessarily being upfront with them as well. So we could all stand to get together and have a little bit of honesty, I think.
If I could just sort of try and explain a little bit what I was talking about. Anti-doping is over here. The WADA code stipulates how that's conducted. It leaves room for the sport to implement its own rules, and a rule could be a no-start rule. Okay, so I'm not talking about anti-doping here, I'm not talking about plea bargains. The sort of discussion that I'd like to have with a group of cyclists is to say, well, 10 years ago you had a 50% hematocrit rule that you agreed to, and we know that based on the number of people in a population that will have hematocrit over 50%, about 30 in every 1,000 athletes will be above that threshold. You accepted that anyone above that would have a no-start penalty. At the moment, we've got a passport that can give you a 1 in 1,000 likelihood of exceeding a threshold. Would you like that to be the threshold for a no start, or would you like it to be closer to 20 in 1,000 or perhaps 30 in 1,000, which is what the hermetic rule was? Deciding at what level we deem a suspicious profile to be sufficient to give a no start is the sort of discussions that I like to have, so that they don't feel, well, that's still too stringent or it's too loose. Somewhere that they feel, well, yeah, that's fair. If it's an unusual result to that level, we accept that's a no start.
I think there's a few places where athletes could be brought into the process, and the no start's one. Another possibility is members of hearing panels as well. As a pool, you have a pool of experts here, we can have a pool of athletes as well that can be drawn upon at times. Also, the issue of the unions being raised yesterday and today, or some sort of organisation. But there's also that quote in our report about how one rider felt that if people had sat down around the table at some point during the last decade and actually had a voice and were able to talk through the issues, things would have gone a lot more easily. So I think there's a sort of need for some way to bring people into the process, not necessarily at every point of the process, but so that there is some sort of more democratic, consultative, collaborative way of going forward, obviously with checks and balances. I wonder sometimes if some of the disunity is this sort of old school, new school, old countries, new countries, this sort of stuff, but I think a lot of that's been is a sort of bit of hysteria that's been created around things as well. Any more questions there? Oh, 3, 2.
Bruce Ridge from Claudiio. Just wondering, this new paradigm, we heard yesterday about yesterday and today about a lack of trust, and therefore that seems to be symptomatic of a new paradigm needed. And then we also heard about the influence of the box of cereal marketing. And I'm thinking and suggesting that treating sponsorship as a corporate social responsibility is perhaps a really good way to go. And that the corporations that are looking for that marketing influence, if they treat it that way, they take it away from the individual riders and take it away to more of a lifestyle thing, which also requires cooperation of the riders to actually promote that lifestyle as well. But we're taking it away from that individual, clean, pure element into a corporate social responsibility of a lifestyle. Comments on that? And sorry, can I be really bold and say, on behalf of the Australians in this audience, welcome to Australia, Floyd, because apparently someone wanted you to stop at the border.